what is this? Is it a greenhouse or is it they decide? No, it shouldn't be like that. We're one of the few countries that doesn't have what is called the single window. Single window is when you ship a good from one country, you key in the detail and the HS codes, and automatically it will assess how much customs duty should be paid without even seeing what's in the container. So we're doing that. We're bringing those and buying new container scanners so that we can get the right customs revenues. Because we actually import a lot of things in this country, and there is a disconnect between how much we import and the customs revenues, which means money is leaking. So we're using technology to block that. Then we're improving tax on luxury items. We believe that the first taxes that should increase are on the people who have the greatest ability to pay. So luxury items, those of you that like champagne and brandy and alcohol and tobacco should be ready to pay a higher rate of tax and customs duty on those items. So we'll be rolling those out shortly. This is church, you don't drink champagne now. So, on the cost side, of course, we must reduce corruption. We are fighting the battle against corruption. We are fighting the battle against leakages. We're stopping the situations where money just went missing. There was no accountability for money. We're working very, very hard to stop that. We're using technology. We're cleaning out a lot of the ghost workers and fraudulent or dead people that are still collecting pensions. Why? Because 40% of government expenditure is on salaries and pensions. 40%. So 40 out of every 100 naira that government spends is on either salary or pension. So you have to control it. You have to control it. We're building the controls. We're using biometric. We're using scanners. We're using every form of technology to keep that wage bill down. Why? Wage bill, when I first became minister, was 165 billion naira every month. 165 billion. It's a huge, huge amount, so you have to control it. Now we're bringing it down every month. We're taking people off the payroll. Some of them have been dead for years. Some people collecting 3-4 salaries. I'm very optimistic that EFCC will shortly secure our first conviction against one of the ghost workers, those people collecting multiple salaries, because I've insisted that they must be prosecuted. No matter how short the sentence is, it's important to send the message that as far as we're concerned, collecting 2 or 3 salaries, collecting salary on behalf of your mother that died and continuing to collect her pension is fraud. And we must send that message very, very strongly. Then we're reducing our overheads. Governor Obi spoke a lot about wastage. It's one of my fixations as a minister. We cannot afford, we don't have money to waste. So we sent round circulars. You cannot travel in a private jet. You cannot travel first class. You cannot spend more than, I think it's 1,500 naira for lunch. When I came in, some meetings would have, when you calculate how many people were at the meeting and how much they spent on food, it's like 15,000 naira a head. I said, are they there for the food or are they there for the meeting? No, you can't do this. It's 1,500 naira. Whatever that covers, that should be enough. Then we made a lot of new circulars. No face cap, T-shirts. Then these programs where the first page is the president, second page is the vice president, third page is... We don't need all that. So we've sent circulars to stop all that. So there's a lot of efficiency being brought into government. Then we also have worked on our debt profile. Of course, I explained that our debts had increased quite significantly by the time we came into office. And government is the biggest borrower. So once government borrows at 16, it creates the baseline, and private sector then finds itself borrowing at 23, 24. So what we're trying to do is we have to borrow, but we're trying to borrow as cheaply as possible. So we're approaching the concessional lenders. We're borrowing offshore where possible to leave room for the private sector so that they too can come in and borrow to fund their business. In the short term, we must borrow because we have no choice. If we want to invest in our infrastructure, we've got to borrow. We don't have the money and we cannot afford to wait for the oil price to recover because the outlook is that it's going to stay between 50 and 51 for at least the next 4 years. We're not going back to the days of 120 anymore, so we just have to live with the current reality. However, as we improve our revenues, we have a sinking fund set up now to begin to retire debt, so that we begin to pay down debt. As things improve, we begin to pay down debt. Governor Obi mentioned the issue of saving, and I'm pleased to tell you, sir, that last month, for the first time, we paid money into the excess crude account. $87 million was paid into the excess crude account. So even though things are difficult, we are saving. And the Sovereign Wealth Authority, as you know, sir, since we've come in, we've given them an extra $500 million, and we're still planning to do more. So we've learnt the lessons of the past, and we are working towards a more resilient future for everybody. As I've said, we've increased our allocation to capital within the budget to 30%, up from 10% where we inherited it. And that's why you're seeing work going on. You're seeing projects getting done. And we will continue with that. Yes, there is a lag. People are asking, when is it going to affect me? It affects you when the projects are finished. It affects you when businesses, and it's started to happen now. And I'm very happy to say that when I leave here, and that's why I was rushing a little, I'm going to meet a group of investors who've come in from America, long-term investors who are now looking at Nigeria and saying, yes, it's time to come. On Thursday, we have a group of Japanese investors. We're not talking about people that are bringing, sachets of tea for us to come and sell. No, we're talking about people that want to set up factories. We're talking about people that want to manufacture transformers. We're talking about industrialists. They're coming back into Nigeria because Nigeria is showing that it's serious. Nigeria has understood its problem. We've taken the pain. We've taken the pain. Often the medicine that does you the best is the most bitter medicine. And we have had very bitter medicine in the last 1 year. But now we'll have the long-term benefits in terms of growth and in terms of jobs. Then in the area of entrepreneurship, we have revived the Development Bank of Nigeria, which is a project that was started under our predecessor. It had stalled, we got it going. That bank is going to have $1.3 billion of capital that will be lent to microfinances and banks, specifically to be on-lent to small and medium-sized businesses. Because actually our economy is 50% are SMEs. And only 10% of them have access to loans. So if you begin to improve their access to capital, you can rapidly grow jobs and grow business. So that's one of the initiatives. The other one is a project called UWIN, which some of you will know. UWIN was a project that gave grants to young entrepreneurs. We've reviewed it and revised it. We're changing it into two things. One is enterprise education, teaching people how to do business. A lot of people will say, I know how to do business. I was born in business. No. If you go anywhere in the world where business thrives, take America, they have magazines on business, books on business, television programs on business. So it's not innate. You have to learn it, you have to work on it. So we're improving entrepreneurial education. How do you write a business plan? How do you work out whether you're making profit or not? Some people are just doing business, they're making losses, they don't even know. So we need to improve our knowledge of business as well as bringing in the funding. And then on the funding front, we've put together a venture fund. So those who come to us, small businesses that need up to 50 million of capital, will be able to approach the UWIN Venture Fund. Then we take a stake in their business. As the business grows, they can either buy us out, or they can list, or they can look for new investors. So that's the plan. And of course, as a venture fund, we will incubate those businesses, so provide them with all the support for them to grow. We're also looking at providing additional incentives to investors that want to invest in small businesses by giving them tax relief. So encouraging rich people, richer or wealthier people, to invest in growing businesses and allow them some tax relief to do so. Of course, all this is the financial side, but it's being supported by the work that the Minister of Trade, Industry and Investment is doing on ease of doing business, removing some of those bottlenecks that cause 4 or 5 different agencies to come and harass people. We're harmonizing all those things, multiple taxation, to improve our ease of doing business, because that's also a very important factor in growth. So, what do we expect to happen? You can see what happened in 2015, that even though tax was only 10% of our GDP, it was 62% of our revenues. That's what made us vulnerable. So as soon as the oil price fell, we were in trouble. And let me give you an idea that in 2013, I believe it was, the fact, that's the monthly sharing that Governor Obi doesn't like, that sharing, it was 900 billion for 1 month. And this month, which is, in fact, as I've been minister, we sat down 1 month, it was only 300. So you can imagine if your income drops from 900 to 300, there's no way you will not have an impact. Now it's getting back up gradually. I think last month was 460. So there's still a long way to go from where we were. The question we should really ask ourselves is, what projects were done when that money was so high? What happened to that money? That's the billion-dollar question that we're all asking. Which roads were built? Which airports were finished? Which power improved? Nothing. There's nothing to show for that money. But we can't afford to let that happen again. The past is gone, but now everybody's eyes are watching closely, and I think it's a good thing. So the plan is to improve oil and non-oil taxes to get the balance right. So the rest of the economy, agriculture, services, banking, trade, people must pay taxes. There must be more revenue to show for those areas of the economy. We can't all rely on oil. So we're going to be pushing out quite a few initiatives to improve our revenue. Then on our costs, we'll continue to be efficient, continue to be prudent, continue to make sure that every naira counts. That's one of our mantras in the Ministry of Finance.